Welcome to our 15th episode of the Water Talks podcast, where water treatment practice, policy, and innovation receive the focus they deserve. I'm your host, Els Vanbeckevoort, and I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host, Scott Bowron. Hey, Scott, good afternoon. How are you?
Good day, Els. I'm doing great. The sun's shining. I have a lot of glare here today. You'll know my office has two big windows, so I enjoy it. Just a little tough on
Yeah, you're looking
like
good
that.
though. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I love it.
Nothing to worry about. I know we
Yeah.
saw each other just only a few days ago. What a whirlwind it's been. We're really just going to connect a little bit with our audience on the Better Pools conference. For all of you who missed it, it was I think a great day. Yeah, what was your first impressions?
Mine. I think we hit a home run. Actually, I was really happy with the day. I thought that I couldn't believe the energy in the room. Quite honestly, I it was one of the best energy feels I've had at a conference of any type. And the interaction amongst people who many didn't know each other and
Right.
who made quick friends and some conversations I was part of or just kind of clicked into that people were having were like excellent beyond I think what we expected originally, but that's always a positive, right? And everybody who I spoke with just seemed to
Yeah,
take
I
it in.
agree. I agree, and I think it was very busy room. We just about were completely sold out,
Yeah.
but I think we made it work. And the general feedback, like we've had a few wonderful attendees send us some very constructive feedback. We have sent out a survey as well. Maybe we'll touch on that at the end of our chat. I think for the purposes of our audience today, for those that could not be there, we're just going to walk you very briefly through the day because I think there were some wonderful learning opportunities. And as Scott says, also networking and practical, review of what's possible in a suboptimal pool setting that started out poorly but then did extremely well. I maybe want to start out as well by, again, extending our heartfelt thanks to the town of Oakville for hosting this event. I think, that was a big part of its success, right? Also to have it on site. I don't
Hmm.
know how you, how what you heard
Yeah,
about that, but
I guess really that they one is the interaction amongst people. The other was it's I think it's how we learn, and
right,
we did some both basic and then high level or more intricate type of discussion, and then took it and said, so this is how you can use it. And for many people, that's a better learning moment. Some people learn by
right.
looking and listening and people jotting down some notes, and then other people like, oh, this is how this comes together. So I think it's a really nice compliment. And then we had people who were very new to the business and then we had 30-year people as well, and
For sure.
everybody
Very
seemed to.
mixed group, from health inspectors to operators to managers to different kinds of stakeholders. So I thought that was really, and owners as well. So I think it was a really good mix, and splitting larger teams up into kind of mixed groups. I think led to some of the new opportunities, getting to know new people, and getting the conversations going as well. So I thought that was a good way for us to go. Maybe then we could start by just briefly touching on each of the sessions and maybe sharing some of our highlights, some of the feedback, some of the questions, perhaps whatever comes to mind, just so that those that were not there can enjoy just a little snapshot of what that day was all about. Maybe starting at the introduction, kind of the earliest sessions, I guess, where we were looking at introduction to healthy pools. And I think the first couple of sessions were focusing on pool design considerations. Any thoughts on that one, Scott? I know that there were people taking some copious notes. It was very high level, but really, highlighting the opportunity for, what kind of design considerations to keep in mind as maybe you're retrofitting a pool, if you're starting to build a pool, and or looking to just optimize your existing infrastructure.
Yeah, the idea, the overarching, looking at overarching, I always look at that one chart that you like to display, and it's got all the different pods and the relationship to air, to water, to the building envelope and then the people, all the different facets and coming together. And for many people, that simple idea is new, and I think it's a really great perspective to give to people, whether they're in current systems or brand new. And we had both kind of folks
Right.
on at the table, so thinking on a bigger scale of the value of good water chemistry is it's a great viewpoint,
Right.
as a start point for everyone. So this is where we are. This is
Right.
what we can do. This is where we want to go.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, that system of systems slide is always a good one because it helps us to understand indeed how everything is connected. And, even those design requirements, it's interesting because when we, work with clients, and I know you've seen the same in your training sessions and as you meet clients, there is a lot of consideration given to, okay, how is the space going to be used, or how many people is it meant to serve, what's the size of the pool, what's the architecture going to look like, lots of those considerations, but maybe less so in terms of, okay, what's the sustainability footprint going to look like for this facility besides just energy. What kind of air and water quality are we actually looking for? What do we want to do in terms of transparency and openness, and giving some visibility on how we're managing this space. And I think it's a really good place to start from. And you know talking myself a little bit about the chemistry side of things, it's always interesting. People who we've worked with for a while, they've heard this story before, but chlorine speciation, understanding how chlorine actually operates, how it works. In our previous podcasts, we've spoken with, experts in our US colleagues, and, more isn't better, right? It's actually getting it right and understanding how it
Right.
works.
And some people have a good background. And
Right.
I loved it a little later on. We were having the Kahoot, and somebody said, and that's an H plus. And I went, when it clicked. And so, people learn, and depending where you are on the line. So really, it was a great start point, I think. And the guys who spoke did a good job, clear, concise, and that's what people need to as a learning moment as well. Not just having people who are experts in the field, but who can actually relate it and
Relay
relatable
the
information.
information. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's absolutely critical. And I know you're a very experienced trainer yourself, and there's always new and better ways in which we can disseminate information and share it in a way that people can understand. We certainly had some good feedback in some of the surveys, and I'll share some of that with you as well, because
sure.
it's always great, right, to get surveys done and get people to say, okay, I love this, but here, how about thinking about, doing this or that? And I think we can always do better for sure. And keeping in mind that there is such a varied audience, like you mentioned, some people that really are already kind of up here and understand this quite well, and others that are just, starting out on this journey. So trying to make it interesting and appealing for everybody is not always the most straightforward way to do that. But I
I,
think I
I
think we
yeah, we hit it, and sort of sidetrack, but I think that night I got home and read something in social media about a facility that just got closed at West, and the comment from the facility was there was no connection. We're just going to put a bigger HVAC in. We'll just put a bigger HVAC in. It'll fix everything. And there it is. It's,
I know,
uh,
and I know you shared it with me, and I'm looking forward to reaching out to those folks, or one of us can, I think, and tell them that there is a solution for their problem, which is, the root causes of these issues are generally misunderstood, right? And that's where it becomes very challenging and wasteful as well. If we keep doing what we've always done with respect to air quality and not seeing the connection between water, energy, and chemical use, like those connections are absolutely certain, and if they're understood, then they can help us a lot. Maybe I think in our measurement principles session as well, I think it was a good overview. I did see people take some notes and ask some good questions afterwards as well in the afternoon session as we were looking at optimization, just helping them understand the difference between, a semi-quantitative estimate that's a little bit more subjective, which is probably easy to use, but isn't necessarily going to give us that accurate and precise data. Like, was that your sense as well as you were kind of
Well,
reading the room?
well, we don't. It came up, and it will probably come up on that again today in our discussions more than once. You don't know what you don't know, and I always use GPS as my analogy when I'm teaching, and I
Right,
go, if you want to go to a place, you want to punch in the right address when you're doing measurement. If it's not correct, you're going to the wrong address. So you need good measurement, and it has to be accurate and precise. And we have in our business so much that's just because it's sold, it's assumed that it's excellent. And
right,
one, you have to know how to use it. Two, is it reliable? And then three, how much difference does it make on your entire process? Are you
right.
open or are you closed? Are you spending more money here or adding chemical? Like, it's a very, well, it's a start point for your entire, for an operations person. It's the start point for the day. So certainly, understanding one, that you have to have good measurement, and then two, using it properly is essential.
I agree. I think it was a good introduction session. And then, going into kind of our second session of the morning where I shared a little bit about waste identification, like where the waste comes from, which I think is always something that's interesting because people will consider HVAC systems to be, very energy high demand, which is normal. But there are lots of other aspects about water treatment and water infrastructure that also, are make up for the other 50% of all of the potential waste. And therein lies the real opportunity, I think, also for, improved sustainability. Like I mentioned, like the risk reduction is the number one key. So you first have to manage your risk before you can start talking about waste reduction, obviously. But once that's done, there are some real opportunities for cost savings. And that's, I think, maybe something that will drive us in the industry maybe a little bit faster than the regulatory aspect of it, because regulations take a long time. We've got a beautiful model aquatic health code that is being, added to and improved upon, and always, being questioned, like you mentioned. But I think, having the cost savings component is going to be critical to get our industry to embrace change and improve what we're doing. Right.
And also, when you're looking for funding, right? Green is
Right.
good these days, except in the swimming pool. And uh,
Yes, like
but
you said. Yeah.
but understanding what the value is, it's not just something we have to do. It's something we want to do, and we just have to have the tools to do it, right? So where do we get that, and where is the waste? And pools love energy, and energy equals cash. So how do we mitigate some of that
Right.
loss of energy? And it's a wonderful topic, actually. But
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I love it as well. And I think, unfortunately, when you connect with clients, some people want to start there. It's not always possible to start there immediately. You first have to mitigate the risk and solve the problems. But invariably, the beauty of it is that when you start solving those problems, the waste reduction comes, right? So it's
Right.
kind of it's a consequence of doing things better in a more optimal way. And that's kind of the wonderful aspects in all of this. I know that your session on training was also very well received. I think it gave an excellent overview for each of the different stakeholder groups that were there. Okay, what's available to us? How do we do this? Like, what's the minimum requirement, and how do we kind of achieve that higher standard? From your perspective, how did it go? I think it was, like I say, it was excellent and provided that foundation.
Well, it's kind of my wheelhouse, so it always feels pretty comfortable for me, quite honestly. Just want to adapt it. I got a couple great comments. One from the health inspectors was a huge thank you, because
Yes.
not being a bit of an advocate for that
Yeah.
profession, I think, is important to all of us, and understanding what their role is versus the role of the operator. Uh, Somebody who I know quite well just at lunchtime says, "I think you scared the hell out of everybody." That was his comment, which was funny. But you have to know the true risk, right? What's the risk we're dealing with in a swimming pool, and it's high. And not only the drowning piece, but the health piece, which is really why we gathered that day. We weren't talking about life saving; we were talking about risk reduction and so many aspects of it. And I go home and I have a beautiful day of swimming, and then I feel ill later. Well, what caused that? What caused that? What are we doing to our people? So It's just a backgrounder on some of the tools that we have available, and not people don't always love their
No,
code, but it has
I
a
think you
benefit.
built a great bridge. I think you built a great bridge. I think I appreciated that as well, because sometimes people are nervous about health inspectors being in the room, and I'm sure health inspectors always feel self conscious to say, "Oh boy, here, like we're not the most favorite people in the world to come and visit a site."
Yeah,
But the wonderful thing is that when you bring these two stakeholder groups together and build kind of a common purpose, which is let's manage this risk as best as we can. Let's use the correct tools to be able to evaluate that, to do that. Let's look for optimal outcomes. Like everybody wins really. And I think
sure.
you did a great job in building that bridge. For me, it was great. And I think
Yeah,
it was a good way to kind of to round out that session in the morning, to lay those, foundational
it's all
principles. If
foundation, right? Exactly. It's all
exactly.
foundation. This is some of the chemistry we're going to talk about. This is the overarching, and then this is the tools we have to work with, and the players in the game, and so bringing that all together kind of led to the rest of the day. So that would be.
So, what did you think of the Kahoot? So, for those
Oh,
listeners that don't know what Kahoot is, in kind of the younger generations, it's frequently used. I think it got a great foothold as well during COVID when everybody was having to kind of be online. But it's a quizzing software, and so we used it as part of our learning opportunity. And for some people, it was a first experience with it. But I think, Scott, what do you think? What did it
oh,
do for us?
absolutely love. I loved it. First of all, it got everybody. We put everybody in groups, and then it was group challenge, and then we had a winning team. So that's important that people understand. And people, say they're not competitive until you put something in front of them that there's a winner. So they just got the room vibrating, and I love that piece. And it also refreshes people. What did I just learn? What did I just do? And so it was just excellent. I was pumped. I actually left that whole day feeling really good, and that's always a positive to
Yeah,
do this.
I agree. I think it was the general consensus from lots of different people were like, okay, that was so cool. That was fun. And you're not trying to, put people on the spot to say, okay, are you learning or are you doing this? But I think there's some wonderful opportunities for us to really stimulate and promote learning and listening so that, hopefully it'll be fun. Like there's a fun component to learning as well. And
Sure.
I thought it was very like it was funny. It was
Yeah.
great. It was wonderful to see that people were actually listening and paying attention because they all did quite well. And I think we'll use that again for sure for the future. So
Yeah.
from my
I'm
perspective,
trying to
that was
figure
a
out how
hit.
they do it in the classroom setting all the time. So I think you're right. It just breaks the mood, right? And we weren't too heavy in the conversation. However, it makes it fun, and then people will remember more correctly when they're feeling positive, I believe.
Agreed. Agreed. So then the more theoretical session of the morning, we talked a lot about pH and alkalinity management. Maybe I'll ask you what your perspective was. I'll maybe can put a few highlights together for our audience. And there will be, as we're kind of describing what we talked about, what some of the learning materials were all about. There'll be little videos as well in between all of our conversation here today. But what was your perspective on that? Do you think? I mean, it was heavy material in some ways. We tried to make it as user friendly as possible. Did we succeed in doing that? What was your perspective?
Well, I think you have to have a bit of weight to it because it is a science, right? My spiel always is that pools are a science. So the science aspect has to come to fruition. You can't just talk about the science and not talk into the science. So I thought you have such a great overview of it, and one is taking a tough subject and putting it so people can understand is a talent. Uh, I talked to some folks who are not as experienced at the lunch break, and they got it, and so I was happy with that. And the so that's important, right? Did that make sense to you? And a couple folks have said yes. Now I see why this, because sometimes you just attach it to what you already know, right? So you're going,
Right.
that's why this works at my pool. Oh, yeah. Oh, and then the dots are, the dots are.
Hopefully connecting the dots. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
and then if you're really experienced, you just sometimes it's just a refresher. Sometimes we
Right.
forget what we already know. So that refresher piece is always good. I think for most people in the room, unless you're always extremely experienced, there's some new pieces to that puzzle always.
Yeah. And I think it's helpful to help clients also understand that, it is a complex issue. It's not as easy as it looks. It requires some careful consideration. And if there's one takeaway for our audience is that tread carefully, don't do, big interventions as it relates to pH and alkalinity. Small incremental steps is the big takeaway, right? So if you're going to add, you need to change your alkalinity down. You just do it very slowly with a little bit of acid, like having that buffer capacity or that elastic that stretch very, very slowly. That basically allows you to not have this yo-yo effect, which is a serious issue at many pools. You're basically wasting so much chemical in the process as you're trying to manage this process. And I think that for me, if it leads to some more thoughtful approaches to this and not thinking, okay, I have to do, and also for the health inspectors, that they are considering that this isn't as easy as it looks. Okay, just reduce your alkalinity and get back below 120. Well, okay, what's the incoming water? Or what other considerations, design considerations, and treatment steps are being used? And so, helping stakeholders and operators to have a little bit more, hopefully, grace in how they operate their system, so that they don't feel bad about themselves, and they know that there's help available, right? Because
Right.
it's a tough nut to crack sometimes, for sure.
Absolutely. And we had full spectrum from one of the largest water parks in Canada to folks running hot and cold plunge pools, which are a very small vessel, and then taking
Right.
that water chemistry piece and adapting it to your specific needs. That's a whole other piece to that puzzle. But certainly you have to have the background there. So I think everybody was a learning moment.
Yeah, I agree. And I think hopefully, more questions may come from it in the future, but at least there's some tools there that make it a little bit more straightforward, and so
I,
people can
I
do that.
was standing kind of midway back, and while you were talking, and there was a person, and he was almost humming, like he's just writing, and then you see the questions coming in his head, and he's writing down. So, for many people, it was they were clicking. So it
Yeah.
was good. It was good.
And I learned from you as well. So that little idea of the train buffer, having a good analogy to help people understand that if you don't have a buffer on a train, it's a really rough ride. It's the same kind of principle, right? Like having this kind of very smooth transition between one and the other to try and keep that balance going. And anyway, so hopefully, yeah, there'll be some like these resources will be available as well on the Water Health Index Resource Center. So
Okay.
for people that are interested, they can look at it again and come and ask us about more information as they need it. I think lunch was a wonderful event. I certainly didn't get to eat very much. I got to talk to a whole bunch of people who had, like, I don't know, dozens of questions. I don't know what it was like for you, but there was more talking than eating for sure.
First of all, lunch was great. Thank you to the folks who provided that the
Yes,
catering.
caters.
Uh, uh, totally off topic, but it was good. Uh, I did grab a bite, and I had some great conversations. And for many events, some of the best part of the day is just debriefing with the people you're with, right? Whether
Right.
it's with the instructor, as you're speaking about, or just somebody who's a fellow professional, and you're just mulling it through. And I learned this, and I thought about this with this works at our facility. I think those are some of the greatest learning moments in a day. So that time is gold if you use it right, and can really put yourself in the moment. It's difficult with our phones, etc. these days, because we all have our jobs going on out there. So, but
For sure.
the moments that you take and spend just chatting is gold.
Yeah, I agree. I think just getting those questions or people solidifying in their own mind what the morning was all about. Lots of wonderful conversations with many health inspectors. Actually, I was really impressed with their desire to um, to do their jobs as well as they possibly can. They're mostly very thoughtful and yeah, quality people, I guess. And so that
Right.
was a wonderful conversation that I had over lunch for sure.
Right. And the, people who showed up want to learn, right?
They
They may
do.
have been asked there by their manager or something to attend on behalf, I think. But when you have people who want to learn, it's
Yeah.
beneficial to everyone.
And also the operators that were there,
Yeah.
the managers, the owners, like everybody was very engaged. So that was great. The afternoon I thought was fun. We've done this before where we take some water and then we, apply different test methodologies. We were doing what we call a ring test in the laboratory world, or a miniature simplified version of a ring test where you take a homogenized, so a water sample that's mostly going to be the same, that then gets transferred to different testing stations, and people were testing results. And I thought that was useful and practical, and provided some good insight to say, okay, where does the reliable, repeatable results come from, right?
Well, for if you were listening to the results, it was a wow moment because the differences in the different responses, same water, and such a range of response. So if you're operating a pool and you're getting that number versus this number, 1.5 milligrams per liter difference, and I think in some of the cases,
Right.
what's that? Are we open or are we closed moment, right?
It
Or you have to
is.
call an operator in if it was a lifeguard on deck and they got a low number, they have to call somebody in, or
Right.
that whatever that response is. One, it takes time. Two, it's expensive, and three, the proper operation of a pool should be consistent, not a yo-yo. And
I agree.
part of that messaging I think you're trying to get out there. That's great, and it's physical, right? So people are going, I did this.
It's practical, it's physical, and it's interesting that if you remember, the kind of the titration method, and as well as the DPD semi-quantitative method, like there was such a big difference between
Whew.
those results and then using the photometric system, DPD photometric system. I think that's where hopefully people can get a sense for, okay, if I want to run a much tighter process, I'm going to need to get better instruments to be able to help me to do that,
Right. Good
because otherwise you're
instructions.
truly
Good
just
training.
guessing. Right.
Yeah, all those simple things, right? Good reagent, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yes, sir.
I think I
Yeah.
told you I have a test kit that's expired, and I'll sometimes put it in the mix when I'm doing training and just let people do it and see if they figure it out, and the difference is.
Yeah, and obviously that was the one that showed that there was only like zero point 0.4 ppm, right? Whereas it was actually three times as much in terms
Right.
of the actual chlorine value. So there, and I mean, I think that was
It's
super
fun, right?
valuable.
Because it's a wake up, right? So that just
Yeah,
makes you think about it the next time you're testing, or for the managers if they're showing, they
right.
don't always do the day to day, but they may be part of the process or the purchasing part and all those things.
Yeah, I think one of the highlights of the day was the supervisor and operator from the town of Oakville for the site where we were so warmly welcomed. I think their presentation was extremely well received. I don't know what your thoughts are on that
Well,
session, but generally that was the feedback that I received. What did you
I
think?
don't know if there's any better example of a person. First of all, those guys were excellent, and their discussion and their understanding and the way they presented was really nicely done. And from an operational perspective, I don't think there's much better messaging than say, this is what I do, this is my experience, and I'm a boots on the ground person doing the work, not
Right.
somebody just telling me it's great. So yeah, both folks were excellent, and
I think it really
passionate.
helped other operators to, see, hey, we can do something more with our data. Like we can get good quality data. We know now how to get them, and that data can be working for us, right? So to have that capacity for trend analysis, to be able to proudly demonstrate, okay, this is where we were, and it was funny because often they would say, we were still compliant.
Right.
We're compliant to the health inspectors in the room, but this is where we were, and we didn't know what we didn't know, and we were open to learning where we truly were. and then being able to proudly demonstrate kind of where you've come from, and where you can see every little intervention is actually visible
Yeah,
through the graphs.
the graphs and the charts are visual. Yeah, for me, that's
So
a nice win, or rather than just chatting. And I think the compliance, yes, we're compliant, but are we exceptional, right?
right.
And well, let's get to exceptional. And that, I mean, they demonstrate it so well, and so it's pretty easy to digest
Yeah,
for
it's a
everyone.
compelling story, and I think that that makes it so much more relevant, right, to our audience, because it's not just we can talk about the theory all day long, really, and that's part of training is necessary, but to see it in practical ways. I didn't get to go to the site tour, so I'm going to ask you what it was all about. What was your perception? I know you went on one of the tours
Yeah,
with one of the guys. How was it? How was it received?
it was really well received. The the explanation, we went to three different pods, we'll call it three portions of the pool deck, and then the end pool, and then the actual filter system, and chemical controllers. Uh, so really good questions, and some of the folks in the room didn't have a big background, so they had different questions, and then some of the folks who are more chemistry based, why is that injection point here rather than there, right? Those kind of questions. So it was really beneficial. And again, the physical part. Sometimes it's hard to talk in a filter room because it's loud. It
Yes,
wasn't
of
too
course.
bad, and but the Q&A and the explanation from the gentleman who took us around in my group was excellent, clear, concise, informed, and so I think just putting it all together, it was a kind of a
Right.
nice way to say this is what it looks like. Taking the day and walking through the entire, right, this is where we're here for, this is how we do it, and then this is what it
Right.
looks like.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if you were in my session with the other group, so I thought it was really actually a good, ingenious idea from the guys at Oakville to kind of split up the group so that we had, not too many people in one small
Yep.
pod. I think that was okay. Yeah, it was not too crazy.
No, it was nice because we could all fit in the room comfortably, and noise is always an issue in filter rooms. So,
Of course,
but no, it was quite good. Love the booties, and that's good
practice.
management practices. Yeah, so just getting people to those simple things. When we talked to Ludo and he's doing microbiological testing on the pool deck, there's a learning moment that comes back, right, to that,
Exactly.
and so the relationship is strong.
Yeah.
But it was well done, and your discussion back in the classroom was strong as well. This is some different ideas, a deeper piece. We have a smaller group. Let's talk some questions. So great
Yeah.
finish to our day.
Yeah, I thought so. And I think there were some good questions. And again, like you mentioned, the variability between kind of the people that are very experienced and are running very large facilities to those smaller operators. But I think there was something there for everybody. I think in the optimization steps, sometimes these things can look daunting, right? To say, how do I even begin to optimize my pool? How do I change? Practice makes permanent, and we've always done it a certain way. And there's a lot of misinformation. I hate to use that word because I know it's a very politicized word these days, but there is a lot of misinformation, right? There's a lot of or maybe not complete information around, where people are trying to make decisions based on whatever the people that they're talking to know, but they're not necessarily always grounded on good water science. They're not always not always based on data driven decisions. It's more about, okay, this is how we've always done it,
Right.
and that's a general sense
Well,
that I get
I
at
would
least.
say to you, really, quite honestly, Els, this is a change in philosophy for swimming pools. I don't think
Right.
there's any other way to say it. Um, we are trying to turn the page from what we've always done, and
Right.
it's a much more science based, rather than how much money do we have and where are we going to spend our money, and if you spend your money correctly, you're going to save money. And so I really like, well, obviously I do. We've got a history together, and but it is a change, and change takes time,
Right.
and and to the proof is in the science, and if you can understand science and want to understand science, then it's got some value.
And the results, right? Like at the end of the day, it's very practical. So it's one thing to talk about a laboratory or what you can demonstrate in a laboratory. It's another thing, what can you actually do in the real world? And for me, it was okay. Let's give people a glimpse of what's possible with, a swimming pool that's old, that is due for complete, renovation, that had all kinds of tangible problems and intangible ones that they completely were not aware of. But let's see what's possible in practical ways. And, you don't start those things all at once. You start with simple, realistic, easy to do or easier to do. You get good instruments. You start to optimize your pH. You start to actually, do a little bit of analysis to understand holistically what's going on within that system. And once you see that, then, it becomes much easier to kind of lay out a roadmap to say, okay, this is the end goal and this is how we're going to get there. And we're going to do it, step by step, and training is part of it. And maybe, a little bit of fairly low capital, but, process optimization. Maybe something needs to be replaced, but at least it'll become very obvious and evident what piece of equipment needs to be replaced and when capital can be found for it. And, making sure that piece of equipment is going to do the things that you need it to do, right? So it empowers, I think, the users, the operators, the stakeholders in such a way that they're not going in blind. And everybody wins in that situation, whether it's the pool builder, the architect, the consulting engineer, or the company that is basically providing some other service along the way, including the operator, including the health inspector. It's kind of like, okay, how do we get all of us working together towards those better outcomes? Because the work still has to get done, right? The pool still has to be built. The filtration system still has to be replaced, like whatever it is, like we all can work together in that way. And to me, it was kind of, okay, how do we empower people to do that, and hopefully not freak them out in the process to say this is too big a change. I can't possibly begin to
Well, you're building a
contemplate that.
plan, right? You're building a plan, and like so, if you have to do a major upgrade over time, it's not going to
Right.
happen today. We all know that. Nobody has money sitting around waiting to spend. I don't generally
Exactly.
run into. I haven't found anybody like that yet, but it'd be nice. And but and it doesn't have to be a ridiculous money spent, right? The payback is there. It can be proven and justified, and you just have to set a plan and then start working on the plan. Where are we going and how are we getting there in a
Right.
nice, easy pathway? And
Yeah.
that's again, I always say time and time again, do your homework, right? Do your homework, find out where you want to go, and then go there. And how do we, if you go to if you're the operator and you have to get management approval, like the folks in Oakville did, this is what we see and that has value. So, but you have to be organized to do that as well. You can't.
You do, and you have to find a way to build consensus and to
Mm.
bring different people together. And I think the educational piece remains, critically important, which is the whole reason why we do this as well, right? So that indeed people feel like they are a little bit more wise and a little bit more have a little bit more insight in how to begin such a process as well.
I really like
Um,
the comment by the management at Oakville as well, right? We saw the plan. There has to be a financial aspect to it. So
right.
we don't really understand what those guys do, but we understand the plan, and
Hmm.
we can understand the financial aspect of it, which is really our role. That was what was said in a
Oh,
nutshell.
for sure.
That's it. There you go.
That's it. Yeah. No, no, no. It's very true. It's very true. But it's interesting because all of those people have to work together, right?
Right. Yeah.
And even for those municipalities that were there that are seemingly already doing a lot of things right, there has to be in each of us a humility of spirit to say, I don't know what I don't know. I'm willing to consider, because the interesting thing is that you will hear about the problem sites, and you'll hear about the sites that have clearly communicated, identified issues. But the interesting thing is that those sites that are the flagships or the best sites, they typically have all of the same problems. It's just that they don't know it yet. And it's not obvious because there's lots of good technology in place that can deal with something like air qualities for sure. But then, when you do an analysis, you find that there's all kinds of disinfection byproducts in the water. It's not running optimally. And certainly from a waste and a risk reduction perspective, there's all kinds of room for improvement. It's just having the right attitude. And I'm thinking all the people that came to the conference are all, I think, open and ready and willing to learn that we don't know everything. It's not, it may be that we think it's running as well as it possibly can, but the interesting thing is that there's all kinds of room for improvement. And that's the exciting part as well, because that's where the cost benefit comes in lots of different ways.
Yeah, and that proof is in the pudding. Going back to our tour, a couple times it was, do you smell anything? How do you feel? Right? You're a swimmer, you know what that I mean by that. You shouldn't smell a swimming pool. If you smell your pool, that's a pretty good telltale sign that something's off.
Yep.
And that's a good start point. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think so too. I think this is a good little summary. I hope our audience, for those of you listening, that either your interest is piqued and you'd like to learn more, or that hopefully we can welcome you to the next one. Scott and I are already going to put our thinking caps on to make it even better next year. And maybe, we'll see where and how that's going to happen. We'll keep you all posted on that. Scott, are there any final thoughts that you want to share about the day last week or any of the sessions before we kind of wrap it up and close it out for this session?
I kind of where I was, I left energized, and I felt that from everybody I spoke to. I think that makes a positive day, and hopefully we can take that and just parachute on to our next one. We, like you say, we always want to make it better, so take the information we get from the responses from the people who attended, and keep working towards the best possible information sharing that we can, because really that's what we're doing. We're taking a baseline that we all have,
right,
and moving it forward.
Exactly. I think those are good closing thoughts. For our audience, please feel free to contact us if you're interested in the Better Pools training program. So we actually will have those training materials available, and they'll be available on in the resource center. So in the digital platform that we shared a little bit about last Thursday. So the Water Health Index has a resource center. Some of these training slide decks and sessions will be in there in video format, so that you can re-listen to those or re-familiarize yourself with some of the topics as well, if necessary. You can re-listen to this episode as well if you are not already subscribed to our YouTube channel or Apple or Spotify or anywhere that you like to watch podcasts. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and smash that notification bell. If you have any questions about this episode or future ideas for topics or guests, please email Scott or ourselves at mywatertalks@sanicotech.com. I truly appreciate you all being with us. From Scott and myself, thank you all, and enjoy the rest of this beautiful day.